Hello, everybody. This is Justin, and welcome to the Cinema Joes podcast. Like I am usually joined by Casey and Noah, although this time I am bringing back a special guest, and his name is Aaron. How are you, Aaron? I'm doing pretty well. Last time on this podcast, we talked about Captain America: Civil War. Just about, the movie's been out for a little while. But we wanted to talk about it and kind of get our general thoughts and talk about some of the flaws, some of the things that we thought worked pretty well. But this time I thought we'd talk about a little bit more specifically and really focus on some of the minor characters. So I thought I'd start by just asking you generally, Aaron, do you think that this film balanced its cast well? Do you think everybody had their time to shine?
I definitely felt that the script balance was on point. I liked how they leaned on the work that Age of Ultron did in terms of character development. Everything felt like a natural extension from that. I kind of wish that there was a little bit more time with Jeremy Renner's Hawkeye, just because at first blush to me, it wasn't apparent why he was getting involved, but with thinking it over, it became clear. So, for the most part, I thought it did well, but I think if they had spent a little bit more time on, say, Jeremy Renner or on Black Widow in determining that specific motivation, I thought it would have been better. But overall, I thought they did a good job.
Yeah, I'm with you there as well. I do think that there's a certain amount of kind of assumption being made by this film that you are familiar with the other films and have seen why they would make these decisions. And I guess that was one of the reasons why I didn't necessarily one of the criticisms that I kept seeing was about the fact that the film didn't justify the two sides, or that it was weird that Captain America was on the side he was on. And I was like, well, this does make sense if you've seen the other movies. And also, if that weren't enough, the characters, I think, they're fairly explicit about why they're taking the sides that they do. I don't think that's, and maybe, and not necessarily in a subtle way. So I don't know. I thought that was fairly clear by the film, but. So I think, yeah. So I guess we can agree that there's definitely a balance shown to the characters. But let's talk about some of the minor characters who maybe who are new to the franchise. And I kind of want to start with let's start with Black Panther. Yeah, and we can talk about the character and also the actor who plays him. Black Panther. Do you think this is He's new to this universe. He has quite a lot of lore behind him. He's not a new character necessarily. Do you think that he worked within the framework of this kind of Captain America / Iron Man team dynamic, or does he get lost in the shuffle?
I think what's great about him, I don't necessarily think he gets lost. I think that he has a very strong sense of where he is. It's just I would say he's not as featured as you would think he should be, given how awesome he was. But I think that's because he has a certain comfort, as a character, he has a certain comfort in himself. He knows that he's not interested in Cap v Iron Man. He wants Bucky. And then later he wants Helmut Zemo. That's what he wants. He has an objective and he's going to achieve it. So I don't think he cares. He just saw, Team Iron Man as, a means to achieve that goal. He was going to kill him. He wasn't going to let, any sort of due process take care of Bucky. He was going to kill him pretty clearly. That was his objective. But I would say that I felt that in that specific role, he did very well. just seeing him in the film by itself makes me a little worried about his standalone movie, but that's something we can explore a little later.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that character is served by the fact that he is played by Chadwick Boseman, who is one of those actors who has like been in some in mainstream movies, I would say, hasn't really broken out, even though he's played Jackie Robinson and James Brown, just two of the major figures of the 20th century.
Yeah, and he's an immensely talented actor, and he's just so fun to watch in everything he's in. I can't speak of Gods of Egypt, though. I didn't see that, but in the things I've seen him in, I have, and he's going to be Thurgood Marshall, so there we are. I guess it's an upcoming biopic. The thing that I know he's being written by Ta-Nehisi Coates now in the comics, so they have an immense, a very smart person writing that series, really a brilliant mind. But I worry about sort of his development and sort of his role in the Marvel Universe, because now he's, I guess spoiler alert? Is that necessary? I mean, spoilers, I guess? Yeah. So he's now, king of Wakanda. So he can't be swinging around with Spider-Man or, Captain America fighting crime and shit. He's his own dude. He's got his own things to worry about. And I fear, and this is something that happened with Daredevil Season 2, because he's a lawyer, and I was very excited in Daredevil Season 2 to see him lawyer, Matt Murdock lawyer, because that's his job. I mean, I want to be a lawyer too, so that's part of why. But he was going to do his job, and then he was dreadful at it. He was really, really bad. And I think what I liked about Chad Boseman quite a bit as Black Panther is he was a warrior second, but a king first. And that was sort of, I think, how he approached it. He wanted to kill Bucky, not, because Bucky threatened his state. It's a kingdom. You have to respect the king. You have to follow the king. You have to bow down to the king. If you let a king die, what's to stop you from killing another king? You have to kill the person. So yes, there's an emotional resonance because he's avenging his father, but there's also a matter of state because it's a monarchy. That's what he lives in. So that's my fear for the Black Panther movie, is if they don't spend enough time with him being a king, then why not just have like a Falcon movie instead? Because Falcon's charming and, he could do his own stuff, but I think the draw of Chadwick Boseman is his regalness. And if he's just fighting people the entire time, I think it's harder to convey that sort of draw.
Yeah, and that would be something different, because I really feel like in this, like, I have to say, like, as much as I love Chadwick Boseman in this, and I really think that they can do great things with this character, I do think there's maybe a way in which he is very driven by vengeance, understandably so. Mm-hmm. You understand why he's as upset as he is, even if we don't necessarily condone the fact that he wants to kill people for it. This is very much him kind of like as a younger guy kind of, having to learn. He learns throughout this film, and maybe we can get into that. We can get into the sort of arc, the finishing place of his arc in this movie. But he does learn that is not the right course of action, either for himself as a person, but also definitely for himself as a leader of a nation. And I guess that'll be something new for the film to tackle. If it's, I don't know enough about the film. I have to check. But I don't know if it's being set as like a prequel to Civil War, like if it's before Civil War or afterward, because that's going to impact the kind of character arc that they choose to adopt for him. So. But yeah, let's talk about the ending of his arc. Were you convinced enough by that arc and by his ultimate decision to spare Zemo's life?
That's a hard one to answer. I would say it honestly depends on the Black Panther movie. That's what I think. Because if he killed Helmut Zemo, right? So, oh yeah, spoilers. He doesn't kill Helmut Zemo. Uh, the reason why he spares Helmut Zemo's life. So Chadwick Boseman, Black Panther, T'Challa decides not to kill Helmut Zemo because he doesn't want his life to be consumed with vengeance. He recognizes that it's not healthy, and he doesn't have the time or the inclination to do that. And this is the thing that I think is important with him as a character, and why I worry potentially about a Black Panther movie, is because I think choosing not to kill Helmut Zemo shows that he wants to be better than he is. Like, he is striving to be like his father was as king, or what he perceives his father as king was like. So he's trying to hold himself now to a higher standard. So he's not going to, debase himself necessarily with killing for vengeance sake. He's accepting that he has new responsibilities that he has to engage in. So that's why, for me, it's very hard to see his character without that lens. Because, one, the actor Chadwick Boseman clearly spent time feeling this, or trying to understand what it's like to have a whole people dependent on you. That's something that clearly weighs on him, especially at the end. He has to be an example. So what I would say is, if we continue seeing him act like that, then I think I buy it. Because if, he's, fighting all the random enemies all by his lonesome in Wakanda, which is something that a king or any ruler does not have time to do, then this was just a momentary lapse in who he is. Right? Okay, so this is why. Because to me right now, it's a lot like Thor. Right? So the entire first movie of Thor is Thor coming to the emotional realization that he is not fit to be king. That's the entire point of Thor. I really like Thor, but it's like he recognizes he isn't ready yet. And so that's what I think his arc is doing, is getting him prepared to be king of Asgard, even though Loki, I think you could argue, it would be a better king overall. Thor has to come to the emotional maturity. Chadwick Boseman's T'Challa is already there. He already understands that he can't, just run off and do his own thing. I think. At least that's what came across. It's why he didn't get really involved in the Captain America versus Iron Man drama aspect of it. He's not involved in that drama. He has a goal. He's working with these people, kind of like a contractor. So he's not as emotionally invested, which is appropriate. These are people who run around in tights. He's a king. It's like there's a different dynamic at work there, and he definitely embodies that. So I guess for the time being, I would tentatively say yes. I do buy that development. We'll just have to see where the writing takes him.
Yeah, and it was the reason why I asked it was because that was a criticism that I've heard also of the film, is that people haven't bought the fact that he would spare Zemo's life after learning that Zemo was ultimately responsible for his father's death. Like, not to just agree with anything, but I do think it works, and I like what you said about him being striving to be better than he is. I thought what was so great about the scene, and why I bought his ultimate decision to spare Zemo's life, had a lot to do with Chadwick Boseman's performance in that scene, because as he's sort of explaining his logic, the way that he's doing it, and like the look on his face, like he's trying to deal with all these conflicting emotions, and I think you see that in his facial expressions. I think you hear it in his voice, that he does still have this anger for the people who killed his father, as I think a lot of people would. He still does have that anger but he is making the decision. And I think there's a way in him talking about it and explaining it that enables him to keep that anger and that grief at bay.
Yeah.
And that's a very good quality in a leader. You're allowed, you are human, you are allowed to feel the things that you feel. You're allowed to feel rage at someone who has killed killed one of your parents. I think that's perfectly legitimate. But at the same time, you have to recognize that you are a leader. And I think I really want to stress Boseman's performance in that scene is what sold it for me, because you can tell he still has all those resentments that were there throughout this film that he had put into action. He is now attempting to keep those at bay, and that I think is what to me sold it. It's not that he necessarily it's more grudging than I think a lot of people have given it credit for, and I think that's all in Boseman's performance, and especially that scene, which might be one of my favorite scenes in the movie, which is saying something because there's a lot of great scenes. And well, maybe that's a good segue then into what we think of Zemo, because that's another criticism I keep hearing is about Zemo. Oh, just another. What do you say? What do you say, Aaron, to people who say that Zemo's just a minor, just yet another minor Marvel villain?
Well, I would say that these are the same people who believe that Ultron wasn't a great Marvel villain, which is to say, I don't think they quite got it. I don't think they quite got it. I mean, the whole point of this film is that the actions that these heroes have in saving the world do have consequences because of those costs. Vision says it best. The problem seems to have gotten worse since we had these super teams. So Zemo, one, I thought he had very clear motivations. I mean, like family dying.
Because of Tony Stark, really.
I mean, come on. Because of Tony Stark, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't... What's there to... I bought him every moment as someone who is driven to take revenge. Some of his decision-making, I think, was a little off, but I don't have a complaint about him. I thought he did a good job. I thought his character made sense, was fairly well written, and he fit in with the theme that the movie was trying to convey, that there are consequences to blowing up cities and, killing thousands of people. Even if it is unintentionally, there's consequences to death. And I felt that he embodied sort of the harsh representation. If you think of Zemo, and this is why, I'll say I wish Zemo died. Not necessarily that Black Panther killed him, but I wish that he died. Because you run the risk of bringing him back. And I think, what I liked about the film, having, the mother come to Tony Stark and be all like, this was my son, he died. Having these people, and Zemo being the biggest example of it, of how violence eats away at you. The violence that you commit eats away at you, can destroy your team, can destroy your relationships. That's what it's about. I felt Zemo was he was understandable, but he was also driven. He was single-minded. He was immoral. That's what he was. He was the corrosive effect of harm. It ruins everything, because eventually you can't stop the pain from getting to you. And so I worry about them bringing him back, because eventually it becomes he'll be responsible for all the bad things that happen to the Avengers. But he's not. It's the harm that they've done. He hardly did anything at all. What did he do? He just was like, hey, Bucky, I'm going to mind control you now with, my notebook of power. And Captain America's going to act irrationally trying to save Bucky. And Iron Man's going to try and do the responsible thing. And there was so little that he did, truth be told, in terms of setting these people against each other. And that's the thing that worries me, is because I think people are taking away from it that Zemo drove the Avengers against each other. But he didn't.
He fanned the flames.
It was their own actions that drove them against each other. He did. He might have, he fanned the flames, but the fire was there before he got there. Yeah, and that's And that's what worries me. I would like to continue seeing it as a theme, the fact that, they're dysfunctional and they don't want to be around each other because it's just too painful. And then, of course, they unite in time for Infinity War, but it's like that's why I did like Zemo. From a narrative standpoint, I felt he served a very strong purpose. I felt Daniel Bruhl did enough. He did a good job. I don't want to understate that, but he did enough to communicate that this was someone, driven by grief to cause harm. And it's like, if your wife and kid die, I can't imagine what people would be willing to do,
And that's a big theme of this film. Is almost every character is dealing with the past and attempting to respond in a way that they deem appropriate because of that.
Yeah.
But there is a way in which people can manipulate you based upon your grief, based upon your desire for vengeance. That is something that allows someone like Zemo to manipulate the Avengers as he does. I know what you're saying, like this idea of him being functional, and I do want to. This is kind of like part of my, retort to people who say that Zemo is just another minor villain. Is that if he is, it's pretty much by design. It's very intentional because it is not about him. He is trying to set these things up, but he's not doing it for the credit. He's not doing it because he wants people to know that it was him who ruined the Avengers. He's doing it for his own personal reasons. Whatever it takes to get that is what's important. I mean, he is very, I would say, poignantly low key. Not to be unintentionally punny there, especially in the scene when he confronts Iron Man and Captain America in Siberia after killing all the other Winter Soldiers. Because, again, it's not about grandstanding. It's about he has something that he wants to happen, and this is how it happens. And I found this idea of him being very consumed by the past. I did really like the device of him listening to that phone message, because at first we're like, what the heck, what is that? And we're interested, we're intrigued, and we find out what it is. I have not seen this a second time, but I imagine on a second time it's incredibly poignant to have him listening to that the entire film. And I also want to speak to Daniel Bruhl, who I love him in everything I've seen him in, pretty much. Great in Inglourious Bastards. I think the way he so convincingly internalizes his pain in this movie to a point, but it's not showy, and it's not showy at all, but it's still interesting. You feel it. You feel it even when you're not sure why. But I do want to stress, I think that's so intentional, both on the part of the screenplay and the direction and the performance. He's the unique Marvel villain. Yeah, he's not like, to me he's more interesting than someone like Ronan the Accuser, or what are other unsatisfying or like Ironmonger from the first Iron Man, even though I like that movie. Because he's so not making it about him. He's making it, and that's what I wanted to say. I wanted to respond to what you said about the fact that you wished he had died in this film. I like the fact that he lives because he gets the chance to say, for Martin Freeman's character, who we really don't get to see for that much in this movie. I assume he's going to come back at some point. When Martin Freeman says, "Oh, your plan looks like after all that your plan failed," and there's the, well, did it fail? And I like the idea that he's going to be this specter that's around. Maybe I hope. See, here's the thing. Here's where I agree with you. I think that I definitely don't want to see him influencing anything, but it would be interesting to see him more as a specter that kind of hangs around as this reminder that the Avengers can be manipulated. They can be driven to near killing each other. And I would not want to see him actually tangibly impact anything in the universe anymore, because I really feel like he is done for the most. But if I could see that character committing suicide because his mission is complete. I wouldn't want to see him impacting anything in actuality. Almost like Zahir in Legend of Korra. Like I like the idea of him being that kind of character, who kind of hangs around, doesn't really influence anything, but is a reminder of the past and the terrible things that people can do when manipulated by their emotions.
They really were both wonderful. I don't think you can say... I've been much more effusive in my praise of Chadwick Boseman than Daniel Bruhl, but I felt that Daniel Bruhl did exactly what he needed to do, and that is a credit all to its own. He was exactly as good as he needed to be.
I think that's a good way of saying it. Like, I wouldn't say it's a role that necessarily is like allows for a lot of charisma, which is something I think the role of Black Panther allows for a little bit more of. But man, you completely understand and appreciate his grief, and I really appreciated that about Bruhl. I was secretly hoping we were going to have time to talk about maybe some of the female characters.
I mean, I'm a little confused by Romanoff's motivations. Maybe I need to see it again.
I see that's something that I think maybe the film doesn't do as well, is really serve its female characters. At the same time, like, I am interested in seeing more of them. Like, I want to see more of I want to see more Black Widow. I want to see more of Sharon Carter, who gets like one scene in this movie where she does a lot, and she seems really fascinating. She reminds me a little bit of her, I guess, grand aunt or great aunt.
Yeah, great aunt. I love Peggy.
Great aunt.
Peggy Carter's great. She's wonderful.
Fantastic. I love. General. Yeah. I hope we see more of her and learn more about her. But I think that, to me, that is something the Marvel Universe does need to work on, is really serving its female characters. And not, when I say serving, I mean more like giving them interesting conflicts at the center of the film.
I will say this about, the Natasha Romanoff criticism. I mean, I haven't done a minute-by-minute breakdown of the film, so I wouldn't be able to give you accurate. But I felt that Natasha was given time on screen in this movie. So I just felt like we were missing the movie that would have helped.
Are you talking like this, like a solo film?
Yeah, like a solo film. I think would have helped explain her motivations better. Because Captain America, we needed to see the evolution. Iron Man, we needed to see the evolution. We needed to see the evolution of these people. Black Widow is more of an enigma. Maybe that's intentional. I mean, one theory looking at this film is that the people on Team Iron Man are actually motivated by the idea of order, of regulation, of stability. And
that's
the people on Team Cap, I think it's implied that Ant-Man is hired to be there. Jeremy Renner shows up because at the end of Ant-Man, he meets with Falcon because Falcon apparently has a job for him. So Ant-Man's just kind of brought on. Falcon is loyal to Cap because Cap is Cap. Elizabeth Olsen's Scarlet Witch doesn't want to be pushed down anymore. Jeremy Renner is just, he can't quit. He can't stop superheroing, even though he should, which is what Age of Ultron was showing us, is that he should stop, but he won't, because something in him won't let him stop. So everyone on Team Cap has got their own reasons for being on Team Cap. For Team Iron Man, Tony Stark does believe in the regulation, even if that belief in it is being influenced by his own personal trauma, but Vision definitely believes that it's at least worth considering. He says as much. Maybe Natasha Romanoff also believes in it. Maybe this is a reference to what's going on in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It's hard to really counteract these supernatural threats without something like S.H.I.E.L.D., so maybe she's reversing course from Cap 2 a little bit. Chadwick Boseman is, he was doing his own thing. He was just serving the size that best suited his needs. And, Don Cheadle, of course, is also, he thinks it's arrogant to let, the Avengers police themselves. And he says as much to Cap. So the people on Team Iron Man, from appearances, actually seem to believe in the idea oversight. for the Avengers. The people on Team Cap are more like, we're just following Cap because he's cool. So that's what I thought was an interesting dynamic about the film, and why, for me, I went in thinking I was Team Cap. I left leaving Team Iron Man pretty much all the way.
I'm somewhere in the middle, still very much. I think we'll wrap it up there. That concludes our discussion of Captain America: Civil War. I want to thank our listeners for tuning in. We'll probably have more. I think our next thing is going to be our favorite films of 2016 so far. So look forward to that. Please like and subscribe us. We will be probably on iTunes very soon, I'm hoping. Aaron, is there anything that you want to plug?
Nope. I'm just going to be starting something in August. So when I have more details on that, I'll let you know.
Oh, cool. I look forward to whatever that is.
Yes, I am leaving it intentionally vague. But no, it'll be odd. You'll all see.
Okay, well, I guess we'll look forward to that. I'm just going to plug my website, thecinemaverick.com, which I've plugged a little bit before. Should have some interesting stuff on there. I do reviews. I do rankings of various auteurs.
He does it handsomely, too.
Other things. Oh, thank you very much. Cool. Well, once again, thank you all for listening, and we will see you again on the next podcast.